WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
What we're gonna do right here is go back, way back into time.
This is Butch Slaughter, and you're listening to the echoes of Indiana Avenue. Welcome to my neighborhood, the Avenue. I grew up here, and each week I'll be sharing the sounds and stories of the people that made the Avenue great. Welcome back to the Avenue. On this week's show, we'll explore the music of Merging Traffic, an influential jazz fusion band that thrived in Naptown during the 1970s. Indianapolis music critics raved about Merging Traffic's sound, and audiences packed local venues to hear the band. By all appearances, Merging Traffic were destined for national success, but the band split apart during the early 1980s. Merging Traffic was co-founded in the early 1970s by keyboardist Kenny Sims and vocalist George Benn. Over the years, the band featured many prominent Indianapolis musicians, including guitarist Eric Fearman, best known for his work with the Dazz Band, and drummer Rayford Griffin, known for his work with Jean Luponte, Stanley Clarke, Patrice Rushen, and more. Merging Traffic will be reuniting for one night only at the Jazz Kitchen on April the 10th. Stay tuned for the next hour as we explore the history and legacy of Merging Traffic. We'll also share a selection of powerful, never-before-heard recordings from the band. In 2017, WFYI's Kyle Long spoke with Merging Traffic co-founders Kenny Sims and George Benn. Let's join their conversation as they discuss the band's origin and the influence of pianist Earl Grandi, often called the Dean of Indiana Avenue.
So you grew up in Indianapolis?
Grew up in Indianapolis, Butler, Tarkington area.
Yeah, and what was your early involvement with music like?
Well, probably my house. My mom, my dad, both of my sisters, both of my brothers all played piano. And so it was very much a sound in our house. You know, Dad's constitution was to come home from work. That was his stress release right there. Then he watch Walter Cronkite and eat.
Yeah.
You know, he was a very routine guy. But that all started it, and then my piano style is totally different. It's totally different because I was trained by a blind pianist. I had studied music, but he taught me to hear it.
Earl Grandi.
Groundhog.
Groundhog.
Wow, you studied with Groundhog.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
But see, he replaced my aunt. When my aunt got sick at church, my dad was his doctor.
Okay.
And so he would play our Sunday services. And so we had morning service and evening service. And so he'd come home with us for dinner. And I'd have my piano lesson. He'd take his nap and come back and throw down in church that night. he would come over, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" "Okay, play this," and I'd put on a record, and he played Peter Nero. I said, "Okay, Jimmy Smith." He plays it. Okay, and I just couldn't buck him. He knew every song. He knew every style.
I'm gonna try to play and sing it for you. Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bone. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. Those 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
George, what about you? Did you grow up here in Indianapolis?
Well, I was born in Detroit, but I guess we came here when I was 6 or 7, but even prior to that, I had always been singing. Singing was kind of part of my DNA. And when I got here, for one reason or another, I started singing at the Church on the Circle, and became a professional choir boy, if you will, and have been so ever since. And actually, throughout, after having done that all my life, really, I went to Broad Ripple High School, and that's where Kenny and I met, was in high school. In our second year, things evolved from my classical music choral background into, just doing. We did standards, we did doo-wop, we did, stuff until we finally, then I ended up singing standards with Kenny, and then ended up joining his ensemble after having been in a band too, an R&B band. And it just evolved, and then we've been tied together, as
Too long.
writers. Yeah, too damn long.
What was the name of your R&B band? Do you remember?
Well, the first one was Sounds Like Us, and that was with my buddy Rick Turney and stuff at Broad Ripple High School, and then I think we turned it to it's not something that sounds like Grand Funk, but it was Indiana Soul Train. That's what it was, Indiana Soul Train. And then after that, it was Groovin' 3+1, with Kenny's band, and then Emerging Traffic for me.
So you appeared as a vocalist with the Groovin' 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That kind of came up. Is it my turn to talk?
Yeah, no, I want to ask you.
It's all man. This is a
jump in.
free for all. This
Exactly.
is a free for all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you a little about the Groovin' 3 before we move on. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the Groovin' 3 started out Miles Butch Lloyd on bass, Paul Hines on drums, and myself. And we rehearsed at Butch's house. Butch had a piano, and they had an organ, a B1, and he could play the organ very well. He had the touch, he had the stubby fingers and all that, and it was just something that I hated, because in our church we didn't have a Hammond, we had some sort of cricket organ, and my aunt played it. But anyway, the Groovin' 3 started about 68, and that wasn't my first group. The first group that Butch and I were in had a drummer named Dale Baker, and I think Dale Baker's still living, and we were just a garage band at that time. So, we did James Brown, stuff like that, anything that had funk to it, because Dale was a strong drummer. He was stronger on drums than any of us, but he was 3-4 years older than us too. So when Groovin' 3 started, I was 16. Paul Hines on the drums was 13, and I think Butch was 14. So it all started right down the street, and then we would go from house to house to keep the peace.
That's right. Yeah.
Practice at a different parent's house every week.
Yeah, my dad didn't like coming home and finding the piano all opened up, and all the top and sides are off of it, and moved into the middle of the room. But my mother was in control of that situation, and she
thank God.
She definitely told him, "This is my call. I got this." And so, and that was the Groovin' 3. Then Frank Smith, Butch Lloyd, the original bass player, obviously, who was really an organist who could play several instruments. So he started with his group, which was a powerful funk group in Indianapolis. I have pictures on that.
Revolution?
That was one of them.
Okay.
And then he was with Rodney Stepp and those guys.
Right, he was with the Diplomats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Groovin' 3 ran from about 1968 to 71. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I should kind of elaborate on this a little more. This wasn't just a garage band. You guys became kind of a sensation around town because you were these young teenage prodigies.
Carolyn Sheets, Diana Bonds, and here are the Groovin' 3.
Made 2 records that were, you told me, privately distributed, but you pressed up 2 records worth of music with some original songs. And you also got quite a bit of press at the time and were playing some pretty high-profile gigs. The Indy Star did a huge spread on the band, probably in 68 or 69, and it was in the Sunday magazine section. Mm-hmm. And huge pictures, huge spread on the band. And in that Indy Star article, it said Ramsey Lewis's manager was giving the group a look, the Groovin' 3. That must have been, giving you some motivation that you're going to have a career in music, right?
What happened was my sister worked at Kroger's, and one of the regional sales managers was a guy named Calvin Day. And Calvin knew John White, who managed Ramsey Lewis, and he knew all the Ramsey Lewis guys. And so he set up a meeting, and we had Paul Reiser, the great Paul Reiser, who did all the strings and the Temptations, Papa Was a Rollin' stuff. he was he changed that group, and so they all came, and we sat in the kitchen at the kitchen table, and they were mapping out everything. I actually have that too. Wow. The original handwriting where they mapped out the strings, the horns, and all that cost. And so we went up to Detroit, 71. Mm-hmm. Cal was transferred to Detroit, Cal Day, our manager. He became our manager. We went up and did a quartet, trio plus one. Then that was probably the first recording, I think, that we actually did with that group.
Which is called, that was Groovin' 3 plus
plus one.
So you recorded with George.
Right.
Yeah,
in Detroit. Then.
Yeah.
And so the plus one thing, it wore on George, and he said, man, I'm not down with this. And so it was, Merging Traffic was actually his conception.
Well,
his
we
idea.
did it together.
The whole logo and all that,
So Merging Traffic came out of the Groovin' 3, really?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what it became.
as we added pieces, the first piece was vocal, then we added, percussion and saxophone and, guitars.
Yeah, from that point on, it was more about jazz. It was more about adding players, whatever. But there was a core group. There was always a core group, and that was the strength of the ensemble. But then we'd add players, and from that point on.
We are merging traffic. We are merging traffic. We are merging. Ricky, Jeff, Gerald, Rayford, and Rashad. Merging Traffic, Indie's own jazz fusion phenomenon. Recently nominated to Rockpile Critics polls under Best Indies Act. Kicks off this weekend only at Mother's. Soon to be Indianapolis' hottest club at 2101 North Talbot. There's ample parking and security. Jam with Merging Traffic this weekend starting at 9 p.m. Friday and Saturday nights. And join the race to the best seat at Mother's, 2101 North Talbot. And strap in.
It was fashioned after a merging traffic sign on the highway. I think we were driving to Detroit or something, and we saw it, and it says that's what we should call it. But it was kind of fun to use that. I thought it fit so well what we were doing at the time. I mean, our inspirations were so diverse at the time because we weren't playing the same kind of music. We were allowing ourselves to be free thinkers all the time. Now, that being said, we still wrote some music that would fit, pop culture, if you will, from time to time, and did some commercial, we wrote a jingle or two for Kroger, we still tried to fit in. We had quite a tie to the advertising community here in Indianapolis at the time, too, because also one of the inspirations for what Merging Traffic had always been doing was the quality of the audio that we were always trying to maintain. We had great partners, that is Tom and Woody, who was the engineer, and John Lazat. Those two people were in our corner, and they were unique to this Indianapolis area in that clean audio was what was their mantra for everything that we did. So we always modeled some of the audio, both live and being recorded, on a standard that was different. It was classical jazz. It was and still it was loud sometimes, but it was all contained and controlled, and the mixes were always of paramount importance to what we were doing.
And this is just a little funky jam session that we stuck in there. This is what we do the best.
And I might add to that, as a result of having two superb engineers, which George became the third superb engineer and remains that, we recorded everything.
Yeah.
I don't care if we played a little dive down on that avenue, we recorded everything. Everybody wrote in the group. Everybody had different flavors. And we would sometimes in practice to sit there and try to play country music and try to play some acid music and just to see where the sounds were and what our abilities and unbeknownst to us, that actually became part of our weave. It became part of the fiber.
On this week's show, we were exploring the history and legacy of Merging Traffic, an influential jazz fusion band that thrived in Naptown during the 1970s. Let's return to our conversation with the band's keyboardist, Kenny Sims, and vocalist, George Benn, as they recall Merging Traffic's unique arrangements of Eleanor Rigby and The World is a Ghetto.
And it's Paul Hines playing the drums, and it's kind of he was a unique player in that he could play everything. He could play bebop. He could play he could play fusion. He could play and he was so special as a player that Eleanor Rigby and that version that you've heard was done again. That was a Tom Woody thing. He recorded and mixed that piece, and it was the production of that was also very special. And it was recorded in the Guilfoyle studio in Bloomington. It was a neat piece. It builds. It's a story.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in a church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits in a window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? The Lord.
World is a Ghetto. That was a time in our lives when war came out and they did that. I remember civil rights issues around that time. And
the draft.
The draft. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's inspired us really with that song. And then Eleanor Rigby, which leads into The World is a Ghetto, the homeless nature of it was very personal for us at the time. So we always carried that as one of the signature songs that Merging Traffic did, and we did it live, and we did that live well.
Eleanor Rigby died in a church and was buried along with her name. None was saved. Look at all the lonely people.
I think The World is a Ghetto is indicative of the influence that George and I had in high school. Coming up through choral music, choirs, plays, there was a flair, and plus we had a great music teacher, a choir director in Gene Poston.
Yeah.
The flair, the whole thing was like, let it hang out. That's basically what he taught us in choir. Open your mouths and bring your soul into the lyrics, and I think that had a lasting impression that when we got to The World is the Ghetto, and because I loved the original. That was a wonderful mix as well as a great arrangement.
Don't you know, yeah, that it's true, that for me and for you, the world is a ghetto. Hey mama, 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 hey mama,
touched it. All those elements of Merging Traffic, guys who had all this diversity. I don't know if War had that much diversity in their bands. They might have been pretty much a funk band, the whole time. But we were jazz musicians as kids, at least we were trying to be. And so we thought in that. And even today, all the new stuff, which nobody's heard yet, has that flair in it. When TLC played it, the first time they played it, I was driving down the street, and TLC was the only radio station.
I think
here.
we were driving in the car together, all of us.
And all of a sudden it came on the radio, and I just about had an accident because I thought, that's it, I'm famous. That's it. Mom and Dad, I've arrived. And that's how different we were as individuals compared to the maturity of our music as individuals. And like I said, I'm admitting, we had a trust factor. We were really skeptical about record companies and labels and things like that. And it probably hurt us to some extent. I mean, we could have been a little bit more compliant to the commercial aspect, 3.5-minute songs, 3-minute songs if possible. Our songs were all 10 minutes long.
10 minute song, yeah.
Yeah, because everybody took a 32-bar solo,
Stay tuned. Echoes of Indiana Avenue will return with more words and music from Merging Traffic after this short break.
WFYI podcast brought to you by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering food and drink, college sports, outdoor activities, live music, cool art, and good times daily. Everyone is welcome in Bloomington. More information at visitbloomington.com.
This is Butch Slaughter, and you're listening to the Echoes of Indiana Avenue. On this week's show, we're exploring the history and legacy of Merging Traffic, an influential jazz fusion band that thrived in Naptown during the 1970s. Merging Traffic will be reuniting for one night only at the Jazz Kitchen on April the 10th. Let's return to our conversation with the band's keyboardist Kenny Sims and vocalist George Benn. They spoke with WFYI's Cal Long in 2017.
You remember Boogie Nights?
Heat Wave? Yeah.
How toward the end of the song they just go straight ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, so Merging Traffic was kind of enamored with that type of process, but we would call it left turn.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd be going along, and at the end of that 16, you knew something was getting ready to happen. But we never knew exactly how it was going to happen. But we knew, okay, now everybody, it would be like being in the zone, but an ESP message hit us all at the same time, and we knew when to turn left. So it was no wrecks. And then we knew how to get back to the road. And so the songs would do that. And so we, like Boogie Nights, stepped out on that thing, which was really hip. And then they'd come right back to Boogie Night, that was the essence of Merging Traffic. Let's find a new way. Let's meander. Let's whatever.
You know me and I know you, but what you know just ain't true. Sit around and fantasize. You hold me close, but tell me lies. I feel
just like a nursery rhyme.
One little thing that's very special to me, John Winston, who was managing us, had the ability he could break into Fort Knox. I mean, he could get in there, not break in, but he could talk his way in. We were the first black band to ever play at the patio. We were the first local black band to ever play at the Vogue. We did Middle Earth. We opened up for Billy Cobham at Middle Earth. John McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm.
When the Hyatt Regency opened up, we were playing at the Sellers Club, the Sellers Lounge.
What was that called?
Cellar Door.
No, it's on the third floor. I can't remember.
It's called the Cellar.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Sellers Door, something like that. It was Cellar.
Well, it was on
CELLAR. That's what I'm trying to say. But anyway, during that time, that was the largest group. I mean, we had 2 percussionists, sax, trumpet.
Wellhouse.
Wellhouse,
that's what it was.
See, I knew it was.
Okay.
But anyway, and we were opening up for everybody, and we were doing Penrod. I mean, we would get invitations to do stuff.
You remember
that was the neat thing. People were asking us, "Hey, can y'all do this? Can y'all do that?" So I knew we had kind of got in stride then. Just the music that we did. Shaft had just come out, and so we did this whole theme, a medley of the Shaft music. People went nuts. And then we'd jump from that and do the Fifth Dimension or do Friends of Distinction, great vocal groups. And
so we did. So sometimes we had background singers where there were, like 3 or 4 girls that would sing with us as well, and
soft touch.
Yvonne Froman, is that one of the singers?
You the man, Annie the man, we're Annie the man.
Who are you?
Annie the man.
He's the FBI. That's what it is. CIA.
Yeah.
Yvonne Froman, Karen Fanning, Frida Lyons, and Gloria Booth. Mm-hmm. We called her Gigi.
Mm-hmm. The audience response was great, but the problem was that the political environment didn't actually it didn't afford us the opportunity to grow, or there was no way to, and that's one of the reasons when the group moved to Cleveland, is because it had to.
We had saturated.
It had to. There was no way to support its music in such a manner as it could be marketed across the country, and there was no mechanism in Indianapolis to actually distribute that product. Now they could use us live, and they did use us, but in order to distribute the product at the time, there was nobody here, and so we tried to move, and that's what was necessary at the time.
So you had a lot of recordings. You had this manager, John Winston, who sounds like he was very talented. How come nothing was ever released?
It's complicated.
Well,
but the question is, it's actually when things are recorded, are they market worthy? Some of what you have to put on the market needs to be clean and polished in many ways. One way or the other. Even if it's avant-garde and stretched out and so on and so forth, there are certain standards that are necessary. And some of it was a matter of that timing. There's no mechanism to get this thing distributed or packaged in such a way that it made sense, because somebody's got to pay for the time for the person to do it, and nobody had that kind of time or that kind of money, so it never got done. And then when the Cleveland thing happened, there finally was somebody who would have actually almost packaged the Emerging Traffic in that manner. But, the Rayford thing happened, and, whatever happened, it just hasn't happened. Now we have all these things, all of these sketches or products that are, that may be, we intend to repackage that stuff, because actually millennials or other people, present day people, actually have more imagination, I think, than did the youth of our day, where they actually kind of like that stuff that's unfinished, or that stuff that the scratches that we may have created over the years. And I think that it actually has more value now than it did back then. So it is the intent to actually package some of that stuff that is archived and to release it. But at the same time, Kenny and I are engaged in products that are present day,
sure,
that are polished, or we hope will get polished. And I want to release those as well. So we're still working on today's projects while we want to play some of those things of the past.
We've been listening back to a 2017 interview with Merging Traffic co-founders George Benn and Kenny Sims. Up next, we'll hear from Merging Traffic bassist Ricky Knox. He recalled joining Merging Traffic and the band's final days during a 2021 interview with WFYI's Kyle Long.
Rayford Griffin, the great drummer, calls you. At this point, he's in the Indianapolis jazz fusion band Merging Traffic.
Right.
And he calls you with an opportunity to come play with this band. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
did you know who Merging Traffic were at this point? Or had
I
you heard of
knew
them?
Merging Traffic as a group in three. I knew Paul Hines, I knew Frank Smith, I knew Kenny, not personally, but I learned about them over the years.
They were teenage prodigies, right? The group
yes,
in three.
Yes.
Like kind of like Ramsey Lewis trio.
Yes, special kids, man. They were, oh my God.
Butch Lloyd played with them too at one point.
Butch Lloyd,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you knew the early version of the group.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. So, tell me what happens when Rayford calls you.
I wasn't expecting that type of band, but it was leaning more sound like what's Roy Ayers type of sound. Because we had a vibe player, Vesta. She played the vibes, and then John Lovell, and then Hank Hankerson. That put that little icing on top of it. So it was very interesting. But that band went through like 4 different phases of types of jazz.
So when you came back to Indianapolis and joined Merging Traffic, they were still gigging and working and based out of Indy? Or had they gone to Ohio at that point?
No, we'd stayed in Indianapolis, man, and worked every place we could possibly work. We did the patio a lot. We did the original Crazy Owls, which was a pizza place on the west side of College. Our manager here, Clarence Bolden, he knew this management company in Cleveland that they wanted us to pack up, move, and relocate to Cleveland. And it was everybody was hungry. We was game. We was geek for it. We had contract gigs. We had dates booked as far as 6 months in advance. let me get this right, 82, we woke up one morning and we didn't have no keyboard player. Said, Jeff, what's going on? Jeff and Kenny was like this. They stayed upstairs in the band house from the rest of us. He just up out of nowhere just packed up and left. Didn't tell us nothing. Fellas, I'm sorry, yada, yada, nothing. I think we made 3 of the gigs. Then the band disbanded. The band is, I think my mother sent me and Joel a bus ticket. Pay for a bus ticket so we can come back home. And it was very sad. It was very sad, you know.
There was no band meeting. There was no phone call. You just woke up and the leader of the band left. No explanation.
He told Jeff.
But no instructions on like, I'll be back or,
nothing.
You know, we're going to work this out or anything. Just gone.
Man, it was more than 25 years before I seen Kenny again. You know, he had no idea what kind of pain he had caused with the cats that was left, man.
That was bassist Ricky Knox discussing the final days of Merging Traffic. We'll end this week's show with Merging Traffic vocalist George Benn and keyboardist Kenny Sims as they share their thoughts on the legacy of Merging Traffic.
And is there a particular year you can kind of point to and say that was kind of the end of the group? Or I know you guys are still playing together, but was it, I mean, is there a continuous stream of activity?
End.
There is no end. And there never was.
Yeah. There was a lull because I raised my family in Dallas. I was there almost 30 years.
Wow.
That was a lull.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I didn't play with any fusion jazz groups or nothing. I played in church all 30 of those years. And that was a learning experience for me.
So it doesn't sound like either one of you view this as a closed book. This is something you're in the thick of it again.
Only because we're writing now.
Yeah.
And rewriting. Some of this stuff is. Yeah, I mean, it's not. It's a songbook. We have a songbook, and we want that songbook to be heard. I mean, you know.
It must be heard.
It's good.
I think we will be taken out and strung up in the center of the city if we don't do something.
Yeah.
Because when I got back here, I was getting it every day. When are you guys going to release Holiday Park? When are you guys going to release this? When are you going to do this?
And yeah, as we wrap up, you know, you mentioned the interest that remains in the band. When you came back to town, people were bugging you about putting this out. I wondered if you could talk about the legacy of what you've done so far and how that's stuck with people. I know, and George, I told your daughter this, you know, I interview a lot of musicians, and this is a group that people always remember and are still passionate about this group. And that includes Babyface, who I spoke to recently, you know, spoke so highly of this group. That includes guys who played in psychedelic bands and new wave rock bands. They saw you on their college campus,
right.
and it left a huge impression on them. That, you know, who remembers a band they saw 40 years ago that didn't make a record?
That's a good.
You know, that's
true.
It's unusual how many people hang on to those memories of this group and how passionate they are when they speak about it. Yeah, can you talk about that legacy of what you did here and how it's kind of remained with people? George?
I think they were all hallucinating myself. Because we were so involved in it, we knew we had people like the stuff. But, you know, they couldn't stand still. They couldn't. You know, it was fun. It was a family thing, and I think every band that really sees their audience excited about what they're doing is enamored with them. You know. I just think we were at a special time in Indianapolis in particular when even though they couldn't support it, we couldn't merchandise it, it was just special.
And I would say the legacy also reflects the fact that we were post Indiana Avenue we were a post-Indiana Avenue band. So I say that because that was where the black jazz groups and the black bands would perform. And as it moved into the clubs and the club scenes and things like that, see, when I say clubs, I mean, one week they'll have jazz and another week they'll have, Latin, and another week they'll have, country, whatever. And I'm okay with that. But I think the legacy was the timing. Because we were like that one unique thing that was going on during the time when IU was buying up all Indiana Avenue and the whole near West Side. That transition hurt Indianapolis, hurt black bands, hurt white bands, whether they knew it or not. It did. I'm talking about the local groups because it had a negative effect on it. It was like, if you're not IRT or if you're not symphony or chamber orchestra or something like that, we're not interested. That was different when we were coming along. Like I said, we had a nice relationship with Little Endowment. We had a nice relationship with anything Lily had the hands on. I mean, we did a wonderful concert at St. Mars where Crystal DeHaan built her house. We did a fabulous concert, and I brought the number 2 trumpeter from Japan, Shinzo Ono, back because he was in Norman Connor's group when I was in, and we came back, and we didn't even have a rehearsal, and we threw down something serious. Those nuns were probably saying, "Dang, what are these boys doing?"
This is hallowed ground.
This is hallowed ground. Of course, we was back behind the stage, doing the unhallowed things that pads did back then. But I'm so thankful that Indianapolis remembers Merging Traffic. It's not an egotistical thing. That was our whole purpose. We just wanted to make people happy that came to hear us. Have fun. Dogs and cats are running around dancing. It was crazy when we played, because really animals love music. And when families would come to Holiday Park or something like that, or Broadway Park, they'd bring their kids and everything, the dogs, and it would you could just tell the birds, anything that was in earshot was okay. Can we all get along? And it was a unique thing. I think that's what that might be. Nobody's ever said that as a compliment or criticism, but that might be the best part of Merging Traffic. We merged people through the music scene into a community of music lovers.
I appreciate you guys coming here and sharing this so much. It was an honor to have you both here. And,
Thank you for.
Man, it's fascinating to hear this.
Yeah. No, you knew more than we did.
But really, Kyle, to your credit, man, you have really studied and sniffed us out. So,
yeah.
Shoot, man. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll do this in the near future. As we're collecting our first. Grammys and all
come
those
back.
things. Yeah.
That's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for tuning in for our exploration of the history and legacy of Merging Traffic. You can meet me here on the Avenue again next week. Same time, same place. And you can find the Echoes of Indiana Avenue podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you download your podcast. Echoes of Indiana Avenue is written and produced by Kyle Long and hosted and co-produced by me, Herman Butch Slaughter.
Nobody knows on uptown, baby, like I do. Nobody knows on uptown, baby, like I do. If you will stop and listen, I will tell you a thing or two.